I want to thank Alex Nisenker. I think this is your third time on
Third time.
Leverage podcast, becoming a regular from Greybrook. And I absolutely am really excited to talk to you because, as we talked kind of before we started, this episode is about, and again, no one has a crystal ball, but 2026 predictions on the market, economics, and beyond. I think one of the misconceptions of people who get into the real estate market is that you have to understand how interest rates affect, are tied to the economy and, GDP and unemployment rate. And, a lot of young agents who come into the market and are, what do you mean? I just want to sell houses, right? So I am excited to talk about, kind of a recap of what 2025 looked like, what you guys saw, what I saw, and then talk about what 2026 is, I don't know, through the Greybrook lens.
Sure. Let's do it.
Great. So let's level set for everybody. As we were kind of talking before we started, this idea of like, oh, 2025 was the worst market. And I've had conversations with clients recently, they're like, okay, no, we know it's a bad market. And I always want to say, can you qualify that for me? Like, so you're telling me it's a bad market. Can you tell me why you believe it's a bad market? Where, what does that mean to you? As I was saying, our team, very humbly, we're very lucky to be back in like COVID volume. So with every market, there's opportunity. How did Greybrook classify 2025?
Yeah, I think like the word of the year for 2025, and it remains so, unfortunately, is uncertainty. And there's a really direct correlation between uncertainty and confidence, right? So I think when you look at 2025, and for example, we had three rate cuts in 2025, and a lot of people sort of said, okay, as soon as the rates start coming down, the demand will return. And I think one of the important points that we believe to be true is that the demand hasn't sort of naturally evaporated. It's not like you have all of this demand that's just sort of left the market, right?
Not at all.
Right?
Uh-uh.
The main issue remains the confidence side, right? The demand is still there. And I think if you can sort of bring back some semblance of certainty and stability, a lot of that confidence will come back. And with confidence, naturally comes activity. So for us, 2025 was a year of uncertainty. I think we're optimistic and hopeful that 26, it's almost like we're at the bottom of the bell curve when it comes to uncertainty. Like you can't get any more uncertain than this.
Don't
So,
say that out loud. Do not
so
say that out loud.
you have to imagine that naturally with that uncertainty dissipating, you have a little bit of a return to what we call normalcy. I think to your point about like a lot of your clients stating, oh, it's a bad market, and how do you define a bad market? And I don't want to use this term, but I think it sort of paints the picture is that a lot of Toronto or GTA based homeowners or people that were transacting on the sell side are somewhat spoiled, right? In the sense that you had a hockey stick on a graph when it comes to pricing on their asset, the ease of which transacting was there. It's like, pick your buyer, pick your terms, pick your price, and you can transact. And I think a lot of that was created by what are like unnatural market factors. You had free money. You had a massive amount of new population entering. You had a shortage of inventory. So you have this like perfect storm of people. And then
For
obviously,
sure, yeah.
and that gets compounded when you have speculation too, right? So then you see like people getting into the market for the sheer sort of speculation side of it, absorbing inventory or buying pre-cons just to flip paper, etc. And these are all unnatural factors. So I think now, hopefully, as we enter 2026, we enter what is like, from a developer institutional perspective, a healthy market, which is like a predictable, stable market that
Balance.
doesn't have a lot, exactly, balance, right? And for us, it's a lot easier to make business decisions and a lot easier to deploy capital investment when it is a balanced market, because we don't like the roller coaster sort of zigzag type of chart either.
Well, I mean, so there's a lot to unpack there. I think even just going back to a couple of those points. So, first of all, free money. People are like, I mean, we're now, so it was, I think we were at one point, did we go as low as 0.25 or zero point 0.5?
Yeah, we were well sub one, right? Like
So
anything
like
sub
well
one is
sub
free
one.
money. Yeah, yeah.
Then we went all the way over 5. And now we're at 2.25, if I'm getting that correctly. Okay. So let's touch on the interest rate first. So money was free, which means that people make very different decisions when money is free than they do when they have to weigh risks. Plus, you had the government going, go out and spend. Interest rates are staying. I said it out like I feel sick. I said it out loud to clients because if I can't trust my federal government to say, hey, we're in this shit show, we're keeping rates low for a long time. Now, like, kind of weigh that on the other side. I remember very distinctly being in sales meetings at my brokerage, and we're looking at like massive sales per month, right? And you're seeing massive increases in housing prices month over month.
Yeah, month over month, you sometimes touch double digits, which, like, if you think about it, it's like, are we kidding you?
No,
Like,
and it was like,
yeah.
I think that the general public probably was like, yeah, like Greybrook and all the real estate, they love this. No, I was like, this is not good. This is not good. This is not sustainable. This will not end well. Like, this has got to calm down, right? So I think that there was all of that. And I think that now people don't really believe that we're looking for a more balanced market because, from a business decision, very, very great analogy, right? Like, here's Greybrook. Okay, we've got a balanced, slow trajectory. We know where the market's going, nothing crazy. We're going to make business decisions. It's no different than the buyer or seller that's out there. I would much rather 100 times over that my buyers have the ability to come in, negotiate, bring their parents, have conditions, do their due diligence than what we saw during COVID, where they had 15 minutes to look at properties and then find out they were screwed, a couple years later. Look at all the people who bought condos right?
Yeah, especially the speculators, right? I think that the speculators, especially like people that are buying based on the premise of like my neighbor just doubled his down payment because he flipped some paper, so I'm going to jump into it too, and that's not the right. I always say when you're buying pre-construction, like buy to occupy. All right. Like if you're
Yeah, those
not
days are
buying
done.
to occupy or buying to lease out, like be a landlord, to speculate. And Greybrook, this is like a fundamental belief of Greybrook. And this is why we're very like pro-balanced market. And it's because we don't depend on time to create value, right? And when you're a speculator of a pre-construction unit, you're just depending on time. You're not creating any value. You're just signing a piece of paper, putting a deposit, and you think your returns are going to come strictly because time will
Well,
generate
that's the
those
way it
returns.
used to be. Sorry to interrupt you, but that there were, I know people who put money into pre-con I mean, we're talking over 10
For
years,
sure.
right? And
Yeah.
you could flip it on assignment, make money, buy another one. I mean, there were tons of people who did that and are in larger homes today because they did it, right? But
For sure. But that's
it's
the danger
over,
of timing the market. The
over.
danger of timing it is if you make that bet wrong, and a lot of people have, you're in big trouble, right? Like, I see all the time assignments and people losing deposits, people willing to incentivize buyers just to drop the liability of a developer suing them. Like it's a
Oh,
nasty
I
sort
know.
of
I've
landscape.
heard some crazy stories. And let's just touch on the timing of the market, because I just did a video on it the other day. So I had the great honor of being invited to the Greybrook annual meeting. And was that like a month ago? I have no concept of.
October, yeah.
Okay. So the great market whisperer Benjamin Tull, had to be called to Ottawa to consult on the federal budget, housing specifically, how to fix it, how to fund it, all that great stuff, because he is really the guy. And so he pre-recorded his speech, and hanging on every word. He spoke about the economic conditions that were going on, and he said basically that the federal government that the feds in the US had the green light to start to keep cutting and that the federal government of Canada also had the green light. Fast forward to last week when I was at the Richard Robbins event that they do annually in part of their ecosystem, and Benjamin Tal spoke. And he predicted there would be no more interest rates 1 month later. And I just thought it was so brilliant because the average person goes by headlines, or the average person sees one and then doesn't continue to read. And if you're in it like we are every single day, and you're in front of these people who are a lot smarter than I am, who are like, you know what, 1 month, I can tell you the economic conditions are this, but 6 weeks later, they're this. No one can time that market and do it.
Yeah.
It has to be for the long haul.
Yeah, for 100%. 100%. You have to look at it that way. And like, we live in a time now, I always make the analogy that once upon a time, real estate was like shifting a tanker in the middle of the ocean, right? It happens really slowly. And now we're like all driving speedboats around. A single tweet can upend the S&P overnight.
Well, especially if it's from Trump.
Exactly, right? Especially if it's from the market mover. So like, we have to be cognizant of that. I think and for us especially, right? We don't underwrite any sort of market dynamics or market shifts, even when we try to predict sales inventory moving 5 years from now. We underwrite based on present day conditions. So as long as the market well down the future doesn't have a big downswing, our underwriting is sound. So, that's what I just touched on about speculating. You can't speculate as an individual buyer, just sort of depending on time, but especially as an institutional developer, you cannot speculate and say, okay, if I buy this land for $500,000 an acre, as long as it's $750,000 an acre 5 years from now, I'll be totally fine. Like, my numbers will be sound. So we
but
can't
you
make
can't
those
buy
assumptions.
it on 700, and that's what happened, right? When you bought pre-con, or in the past you bought pre-con, you're buying on future square footage, and that's where a lot of people got. I mean, I see some of the assignment stuff, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, people got caught for sure.
Oh, really got caught. Okay, so we kind of level set. We've given everybody the doom and gloom and what we've seen in 2025. And I think a lot of us saw this coming to some extent, obviously, towards the end of it. I agree with you. I think we're at the bottom of it. No one knows until it's in the rearview mirror what the bottom is. I get the feeling there's a lot of just murkiness. We're just like, we're here. We're rolling around in it and like accepting it. And I think the next step will be getting out of it. But what do I know? So saying all that, going into 2026, I have seen predictions of prices falling. I've seen stable. I've seen up and down. But one of the consistent things I've seen predicted is that we are going to see an uptick in activity and sales. Probably more on the resale, that I'm speaking to. I think buyers are going to, I feel like they're kind of always behind a headline, right? So the headline has to come out like 5 times before they're like, oh, okay, now's a good time. So I sense that's a good prediction. What's your research saying? What are your people saying?
I think it really depends, right? You almost have like distinct markets within the GTA. You have like the low rise, like suburban markets, which I think are going to function one way. And then you have like the core high rise markets, which are going to function another way. I think, the glut of inventory that exists right now still needs some time to clear. Even for ourselves, for example, we have some sales centers that are kind of in like a holding pattern as we wait to see what the market's going to do. You're going to see developers start to potentially adjust the purpose of that site, right? You have a lot of developers already flipping sites into purpose-built rental. You have like for ourselves, for example, we're reassessing some sites to be larger sort of floor plates to cater towards a different buyer profile. We're assessing some sites to see if now that we have time, can we reassess an additional density? Can we get some extra floors, et cetera, to sort of help with the delays? On the low rise side, like I can tell you that we touched on this at the top. The demand is still incredibly strong, especially for like what we call like really core demand, meaning that it's like close to go, close to highway artery, delivers like bona fide family housing at that $1 million price point.
Without a doubt.
It's
Without a doubt.
super strong. We launched a sales center in Stouffville about 2 weeks ago, and it was an incredibly strong response. We sold a lot of new inventory for the Chateau 9 project.
That's amazing. That's great. I mean, I think that and I know we're jumping ahead and we'll get into that because I do want to talk about what that's going to look like for the builders and what they're doing with the stuff that's being shelved. But without a doubt, so three tales of cities. Okay, we've got your 416 Toronto. That's where I would recap 2025. 416, good neighborhood, good family for even if it's not a forever house, school district near TTC, all that stuff, priced well. I mean, I bought a property next door to the so we bought the semi that was a gut job. The semi next door was completely gutted, okay? Fully renovated. It was an agent house also. She would know obviously how to make it. 28 offers. So again, going back to that first conversation, it's like, oh, it's a bad market. Is it a bad market?
Sure.
Because that house
Yeah.
it sold for 1,550. I actually think it almost sold on the high side. Some people disagree with me, but let's just say, so if that sold for what it was, they held back at 999, and 28 offers. Going back to demand has not gone away. It has not gone away. But the uncertainty coupled with, I would also say, again, then go to the second tale of cities, which is your condo market. And the majority of what's sitting on the condo market is garbage. Not garbage, I shouldn't say that. It's the tiny little 450 square foot, no locker, no, type of property or bad layouts. We have a buyer looking, 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom, Yonge and Eglinton area, up to $1 million. There's nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing there. Yeah.
Because I need a good building. I need not a hallway kitchen, like all that stuff, right? Okay, fine. So, and then you've got the 905. So it's great to see that still parts in the 905, again, near a GO station, well built, well priced, is selling.
Yeah, listen, it comes down to like you have to deliver good product. It has to be very attractively priced, right? So I think developers, including ourselves, we're assessing, right, the benefit of like, do we hold and sort of try to get the premium price, or do we start to move some inventory and give some attractive pricing? We're price testing markets, seeing what the demand is looking like. And I think if you're partnering with a reputable builder and you're in a good core market and you're offering housing, like to your point and what we've chatting, the demand is still incredibly strong. Like we're talking like peak type of performance strong.
Yeah, but it needs to be perfect. It needs to be
it needs to be right. Yeah.
It has to check all the boxes.
It has to, yeah, you have to execute. Like at the end of the day, like anything, any business, right? You have to be able to execute and that's essentially what it is.
So let's go back to this. So we know that a lot of projects got shelved. We have a lot of signs up that are kind of sitting there. What are you seeing? You talked a little bit about shifting towards purpose-built rentals, which, I mean, again, from your annual, meeting, is not an ideal solution, but it's a better solution than what, it is to build condos. And I know that, Tal also touched on, his belief that builders were going to have to change what they built because they're like, but let's just say we get through all of these tiny little shoe boxes. When builders start building again, it's not going to make sense for them to build those because no one's going to touch them. But then with all the developer fees, can you make any money? And does the math?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few factors you have to consider there, right? So first off, if I am a builder and I'm building a high-rise site, traditionally speaking, if it's a condo, I have to sell about 60% of my inventory on paper before a bank will give me a construction loan to sort of build a building, right? And by the time I get the construction loan, if I'm a very sort of efficient builder, I'm about 4 years until I deliver, depending on the height of the building, it's about 4 years until I deliver that housing. So when we talk about like, all the cranes disappearing from the sky, I mean, that's a very real issue, right? In the sense that even if I launched a sales center today, by the time I sort of sell the inventory I need to sell to secure construction financing, it's 4 years until I deliver any sort of housing. So we really have to look ourselves in the mirror and say, oh my God, like, what's going to happen? Like, what's truly going to happen when there's zero new deliveries going into the market? So that's one thing that I think is, for those people that can kind of weather the storm and hold on to some of their inventory, I do think you will start to see some recovery of the price drops we've had. It'll take time.
I was just going to say, so what's your prediction? It's definitely not going to happen in 2026, but
no,
what's your
I don't think it's a
prediction?
26. I think it's like latter half of 27 when you start to see some of the inventory clear. And the other thing to consider is, for the last, call it, decade or so, a lot of the rental inventory that's existed in the GTA has been supplied by mom and pop investors. Like that's the reason we have rental inventory. You're starting to see a shift from that where institutionals are building purpose-built rental. First time in like 40 years that we're starting to see brand new rental buildings pop up, right? So generally speaking, when you have institutions delivering purpose-built rental, a lot of the units that are occupied, that you have mom and pop now competing with the institutional guys. So that'll be a good for the renters. I think you're going to start to see a little bit of price compression on rent. And then you're going to start to see people say, okay, well, now I want to buy one of these. I can't buy pre-con because it doesn't exist or there's no inventory. You're not going to see deliveries until the early 2030s, if that. So that's the rental side.
That's crazy. But, think about it. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the reality. Yeah. And the last thing that I think, and Peter Politis, our CEO, touched on this at Inside Track, that's very important to understand is that there's a lot of talk about like, hey, we need to build end user, condos, and we need to build larger units and et cetera, right? The one thing that we're kind of need to be cognizant of is that the way our financing structure works in Toronto, in the sense that like you're buying a pre-construction unit, I'm showing you a rendering, I'm showing you a floor plan. As an end user, and I use myself, right? Like 10 years ago when I bought my first pre-construction condo, like I didn't have children. I wasn't depending on school zones. I wasn't planning my life. I was like, okay, whatever. Whenever this thing is ready, I'll move into it and I'll enjoy it. But most end users can't plan a real estate purchase 4 years into the future, right? They're planning 6 months. Yeah, like max. So what I think, in order for like the market to come together and all these stakeholders to come together and actually do that, and builders aren't opposed to it, the numbers could make sense, is you need financing structure to support it, in the sense that you need to have banking relationships, and you need to have, whether it's government policy or bank policy, come together and say, hey, like, I can't pre-sell 4 years into the future 70% of my inventory to end users because they are not going to make that commitment today, but maybe 6 months down the line. So I need you to finance this thing on spec and figure out how to sell it. And that's the way most major markets do it. Toronto, Vancouver is unique in that sense. Right?
So I didn't know that. And that was a revelation. So I'm just going to recap for anybody who's listening is that as Alex explained, that if a builder wants to build, a condo, a housing complex development, whatever it is, I actually thought it was 80%, by the way, but so
some builders, yeah, we can get away with 60, 70, but yeah, some builders have to go to 80.
So anywhere from 60 to 80% of all units need to be sold. So that's why before this all happened, you would see sales centers open for so long because they had to wait until all those units, and then they got financing approved, and then they could go ahead and they could put a shovel in the ground. Okay, great. What I found out was that's very unique to Toronto and Vancouver, if I'm correct. And in the US, which is same thing, is that they build a property and then they put it up for sale. And I have to tell you, that would flip the market on its head. First of all, and I'm not throwing anybody in the bus, but a little bit, but there were agents who went out and focused on pre-con for years because of the high commissions you guys gave, and then and they waited and then there was this huge windfall for them later on. But imagine if it was just sold like anything else. There's no smoke and mirrors, there's no nothing, you're not picking your great whatever it is, and you're like, we built this on spec. And yeah, we have nicer units, just like you have luxury houses, or I have the basic unit, and they're going to go at different price points. It would be brilliant, brilliant, because they would sell if they were sold properly, like if they were built properly, right? Like, so if you're able to put together proper two bedrooms, proper three bedrooms, even a proper one bedroom, really, but it's not a pre-con and people just came in and buy it. I mean, I feel like that would just fix the problem. That's the end of my rant. Who has to change what to have that happen?
I mean, it's essentially a combination of, I think, policy and banks, right? Banks have to like accept risk, right? At the end of the day, why do banks want 70-80% of your APS assigned before they issue a construction loan? Because they're hedging risk, right? They don't want to issue you $300 million to build something that they don't know will sell or not, right? So they
One
want
Young
you to
Street
hedge risk.
or whatever that was.
Exactly, yeah. So the banks have to accept the fact that there's a little bit more risk. I think developers will naturally have to put up more equity or figure out the equity side of it. And then, the backstop will probably have to come from policy, at least in the beginning, right? If this is going to be sort of a framework we test out that's unfamiliar to the marketplace, there's going to have to be some sort of government backstop on it.
Do you feel like any of the federal budget like addressed any of that?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
There's my rant again. I love these federal, and by the way, it's every party, but like they come out and we're going to build more and we're going to help and we're going to this and we're going to that. I mean, this is not a shot at you guys, but like when Carney announced that he was going to get rid of the HST up to $1 million on new homes, it doesn't help families find a home that they need tomorrow. It helps the builders, put like shovels in the ground, hopefully, because someone hopefully is going to come along and buy. But, first of all, I have to tell you, 90% of the people I talk to think that has to do with all homes. And I'm like, you don't pay HST. You know what I mean? So, and then you're like, well, you could also get rid of the double transfer tax in Toronto, or you could get rid of, the stress test, or there's a million things from a policy standpoint that these governments can put in place. And they don't.
And listen, it's also important to remember there's 3 levels of government, right? So
they're all complacent. This is every single, and as you know, they all charge you a development fee. I think the last time I had Brad Bradford on, I mean, he was telling me like the city of Toronto has an insane amount of money sitting in their coffers from all of these development charges. I don't see the sewers being pulled up in the city of Toronto to fix that from all the condos. I don't see them investing that into the infrastructure, and yet they're sitting with millions and millions of dollars from the developers. So for sure, I'm not throwing just Carney under the bus. I'm just saying like every single one of them affects, and this is where most people still, point fingers at the builders and say, you guys are greedy. Like I'll post this and people will be like, it's all the developers' fault. The builders are greedy. And I'm like, what is it like each unit? What's the minimum that it costs you guys to build it? Like it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, like at a cost stack perspective, like about 30% of your cost stack is government fees and levies, right? Most builders will sort of say this openly, but like the margin on a build for a developer is it's nowhere near what a government entity is making, right? Like we're in the 10 to 15% range if we're lucky.
Well, that's why you guys built so many small units, because you made more money on them, right? Like that's how square footage goes.
It has to be feasible, yeah. And traditionally, the market operated in the sense that, you had more than 50% of your inventory being absorbed by the mom and pop investor, right? And their main concern is the sticker price. They're not looking per square foot. So they're all about like, what's the final sticker price? And the only way to get the final sticker price down is to build those smaller units. So you're just sort of serving market demand, right? But the demand has shifted so drastically in the sense that the individual investor at least has essentially evaporated. So you have to sort of really reassess and figure out like, how are we going to adjust to this?
Although I am seeing investors come back on the resale side, which is very interesting. Very interesting.
It's an opportunity, right? Market's down, and so they see it as like, okay, this is a good time.
So much opportunity. Yeah. Okay, so predictions. So first of all, I laugh that I'm going to do this, but like interest rates, my opinion, you'll tell me what you think. My opinion is that interest rates will stay around where they are right now. I think they're going to hover. They'll go up. They'll go down. I think they've become inconsequential to buyer behavior. And I actually have, not to go off on a tangent, but I would say, until a tariff agreement between Carney and Trump is done, which I see not happening, like I really don't actually think it's going to happen. He was asked in public the other day whether he's spoken to Trump, and he goes, "Who cares?"
Tell me what you really think.
I was like, wow, that's gaslighting at its best. Thank you for confirming like our fears out here in the average Canadian.
It's not good.
It's not good. So I don't think that. I think uncertainty is going to stay as long as Trump and Carney are in power. And I think that's why interest rates are going to kind of go up and down, and why it's not going to be, it's not going to have an effect. Like, as you said at the beginning, how people thought, oh, it's going to go down and people will come back, which by the way, I thought also, and then Trump came in. So what are your thoughts? Do you think they'll hover? Do you think they'll go down? I hope they don't go down.
I would echo exactly what you're saying. I think like if anything for 26, we have a 25 to 50 basis point like delta in either direction. And I don't see it having a material impact on behavior because at the end of the day, we did have 3 rate cuts in 25, and like it's sort of moved the needle a little bit. But ultimately, it's the people just sort of, function on headlines. They function on sentiment. And the sentiment is that it's going to get worse before it gets better. So if that's the case, then people are trying to sort of stay on the sidelines and time their moves appropriately. And people are also like have like job stability risk, and they have like cost of living risk and everything else that sort of is happening on a macro scale right now. So I think like you're exactly right. Like you need some sense of stability and certainty before you have like a material shift in the dynamics of the market. And 26 is going to take, it's going to be like the buffer year, I feel like.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, agree. This is like so embarrassing to say out loud. I agree with Benjamin Totlik, but I do think that he's right in the sense that our 2026 will not be a recovery. I think it's going to be a lot of what we just saw, which may be like some comfort to people that they're seeing like we're still in this kind of weird market. So maybe I'll just go do something anyway because I don't see an end to it. But I think that hockey stick that you were talking about at the end, which we can kind of close off on, is, the idea that you could buy something, and I am blessed example of it, that I bought my very first house when I was in my 20s, and I held on to it for 3 years. I doubled my, down payment, which by the way, I bought my first house for $162,000.
Don't say that out loud.
I know, right? And then I bought my second house with my husband, and we did very well in that, staying in it for 7 years. And then we moved into and I keep saying this to buyers now, but those days are gone. And it's sad, it is. I don't think that we're going to see what we saw in the past where you hold on to a house and it doubles in value every 10 years. I think you're going to have to, unfortunately, hold on to your home for 7 to 10 years to see equity. And that's not to say that I think that there's any reason to believe that our housing will lose value. I think homes are just going to kind of maybe go back to just being like, it's not your retirement fund. It's buying a home, 4 walls that you can afford to raise your family in, and you're going to think long term.
I think you're right. If you look at Toronto, it's not a traditional market. Like if you look at a lot of major markets, the appreciation that we've had here is actually very unnatural. And the other thing is, like, as Torontonians or GTA people, however you want to frame it, like we've been conditioned to look at it as an asset before a home, which is also unnatural. Like to your point, like your house is like a mechanism of forced saving. It's a mechanism of living and raising a family and sort of, being comfortable and not at the mercy of if you're an owner, right? And not at the mercy of a landlord. And that's first. And then, the market dynamics that sort of help you cushion your retirement environment are bonuses. But we flipped the script, right? Because we've gotten so excited about the way that Toronto real estate's performed. It's like, well, how do I time the market? What's the appreciation going to look like? How am I going to turn this into my next house? And like, it's not a stock, it's not an asset. As far as a homeowner goes.
Yeah, no, we have to reframe the narrative for sure. And I think going into 2026, that's one of my predictions, is that it will be the start of reframing that narrative. And that people will, again, like really, it's where I'm guiding my clients. Like, I do not want to see you buy a 2-bedroom home. There's lots of little 2-bedroom that were great 5 years ago, right? You're going to grow out of it in 4 years. And then I don't know if I can sell it for you for a profit, right? Like, can you stay here for 7 to 10 years? Can you have 2 children, right?
Sure. If you need to, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But, well, I look forward to seeing what Greybrook comes out with in 2026, and we'll have you back to talk about what that looks like. And thank you very much for sharing, what you guys are seeing in your ecosystem. And I'm excited for 2026. Listen, I think in every market, and as I shared it, it's not mine. I don't remember who I got it from, but that idea of like, you go to the beach and no one's ever said the ocean is bad, right? If you're a surfer and it's wavy, it's a great ocean. But if you're a swimmer, it's not so great. So you're just kind of deciding what you're trying to do in it. And
yeah, it's context and perspective, right? At the end of the day. And for us, like, we're a margin business. We'll always look to find margin in what we do. And we're also not we're not tied to a single market. We operate on both sides of the border. We're always looking at opportunities that are happening all over North America. So
no, you're not
while some markets,
no, you're a safe, not that Tridale's not safe, but like you're a safe bet. When you're looking at investment, it's very similar to buying. You put your money in, you get a sense of how much you believe that return will be, and you're in for the longish haul, right? This is not
for sure. Real estate is not a quick flip game, no matter how you look at it, what market you look at. It's years. Sure. It's years of value creation.
Yeah. And if anybody is looking, obviously, in that type of investment, we'll have Greybrook and Alex's info in the show notes. And of course, anybody can reach out to myself, and I'm happy to do the introduction. I know several people who do invest with you guys and are always very, very happy. So thank you again for your time. And as I mentioned, I'm running to the airport. So thank you for fitting me in.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll talk soon. Thank you. Bye.